But in future, Williams' relations with men were confined to brief encounters.
And so what there was instead was what he called in the diary traditional activity, which I think was just a sort of a disguised expansion of trade, pickups of various kinds, and that was his sex life, always with these big, strong men that he wanted. He always said he wanted strong arms to hold him. This is obviously what he'd wanted from Charlie, and emphatically never got.
There were casual relationships whereby perhaps he'd have people back to his flat, but it never really developed into anything, but it was partly to satisfy a fantasy. But once he was faced with the reality of the person there, nothing really ever followed through from it.
Williams' extreme sexual repression drove him into another make-believe world.
He said, I have my own fantasies, and no human being could live up to them.
I think because his imagination had always been fantastically vivid, and because his the margins of his life were populated by beautiful people like road diggers and so on, stripped to the waist, it had to be masturbation. That was his chief sexual activity throughout his life, referred to by him as the Barclays, a Barclays Bank in rhyming slang. And he was obviously a dedicated artist when in this form.
My world revolves about myself. First thing in the morning, I look in the mirror and think, oh, that, you know, what a dish, I think, this wonderful figure, I mean, you know, and this hair, spun gold, it's been described. I've been described as, you know, a head of spun gold. I hope they're getting it in colour.
Snow blizzard whirling outside the windows all day. I hoovered the carpet in the lounge, dressing only in bathing trunks. It was very daring, and the atmosphere was charged with sex. If anyone had walked in, they would have been irresistibly attracted.
He was tremendously narcissistic, and this could take the simplest forms, just looking in the mirror and realizing how beautiful he was. There would be a sort of transport of narcissism then that would reach to erotic heights. And I think the Barclays, the famous Barclays Bank, would follow.
While Williams could never accept his homosexuality, what he did, incredibly successfully, was exploit it in his professional life. In 1958, Williams joined the cast of the radio programme Beyond Our Ken, which later became the hit show Round the Horn. Together with Hugh Paddock, he created a legendary double act featuring the adventures of two outrageously camp chorus boys, Julian and Sandy.
Oh, hello, I'm Julian. This is my friend Sandy.
Well, what sent you trolling off around the world like you did?
Oh, it was the Call of the Sea, Mr. Horn.
Yes.
The Call of the Sea. When I get it, I can't resist it.
He can't resist it. He can't. That's that. When he gets the call, he's got to go. He's got to have you, June.
Oh, like a shot. Like a shot, I'm on.
Yes, he's off like a shot.
So I said, well, I'm game.
And he is, Mr. Horn. Oh, no, Ducky. Oh, there's no one game here.
It was the first time that a couple of camp gentlemen had really ever been heard on radio. Ever. And we were astounded, I think, that it got past the censor, because we had a censor then, of course. But it did.
It was a sort of conspiracy, I always used to think, between the 8 million people who listened, who each would say individually, well, I understand it, but I don't think my next-door neighbour does.
I was recommended to a fashionable firm of solicitors in Lincoln's Inn. The brass plate on the door read, Boner Law. Hello, anybody there?
Oh, hello, I'm Julian. This is my friend Sandy. I've got my articles and he's taken silk.
Frequently. Well, Mr. Horn, what brings you trolling in here?
Well, can you help me? I've erred.
Yeah, we've all erred, Ducky. I mean, it's common knowledge, isn't it, June?
Look, will you take my case?
Well, it depends on what it is. We've got a criminal practice that takes up most of our time.
Yes, but apart from that...
With a regular audience of 8 million, Round the Horn was the most popular radio show of its day. Williams enjoyed his time on the programme, chiefly because of the show's urbane straight man, Kenneth Horn. Williams adored him.
For Kenneth Williams, Kenneth Horn was the father he never actually had. I mean, his own father was a rather gruff, homophobic, here's a pair of boxing gloves, you make a man of him. And Kenneth Horne was just a very, very dear man, a very sweet, decent chap. And I think Kenneth thought, if only he would be my father, and he just responded very much to him in that way. And I think Kenneth Williams all his life was looking for an ideal father. I think really, if you could put one line together to explain Kenneth Williams, it was Kenneth Williams in search of his father, the father he really wanted.
But with the rest of the cast, Williams' ego was all too evident as he fought to be the centre of attention.
Egotist everywhere. I think he would have preferred to have played them all, to have done all the parts. I think he would have really, my part, everybody's part, all the women, everything. And he'd have been awfully good, I'm sure. Awfully talented.
Kenneth thought that he could make a show work by himself, without any help from anyone. But everybody needs somebody.
Kenneth Williams, the first thing he said, well, I remember it very vividly, he said, well, what we want him for, we can do all the voices. What's he come in for? What do you want to get him for? In front of me, of course. I mean, you know, that was Ken.
If you met him for the first time, and he would size you up, and if he thought you were somebody out of his reach or alien to him, he'd probably tell you one of his dreadful, dreadful jokes, bum jokes we used to call them. And if you were offended by it, he'd keep on and on and on until he'd hammered you into the ground. It was as if some demon had got into him sometimes.
I've been held back. I could have been a star. I could have been a star. Or I could have been somebody. I could have been somebody that could have come up to my house. They're going to come up to my house and knocking on my door and making me a very nice proposition. There, it's out. It's out.
He was so suppressed that it came bursting out in comedy.
And I'm glad. I'm glad.
The other actors are very kind of laid back. Kenneth Horne was archetypally English laid back. And then you get Kenneth, this little manic, furious man.
Can we go on now?
Yeah, it's all right. What is on the phone, Mr. Horne?
And all the suppression, all the rage, all the loneliness came out in those performances, and that's why they were so mesmeric.
Williams had become a radio star, but success made little impact on the way he lived his life. He discouraged visitors to his home, and the few who were allowed into his flat were amazed by what they saw.
I've never walked in to any house which was just drab. There was nothing on the wall. There were just gray walls, these two chairs, a rug, and one solid piece of furniture, really. And that was all. It was startling in its absence of texture. There was just no color, no life in the room, no joy in the room.
His musical taste at that time was Lieder. He used to listen to this very kind of esoteric Lieder. Hated me using the lavatory as well. Didn't want me to do that.
When we went to Williams' flat on one occasion, we weren't allowed to use the toilet, for instance, while we were there having our coffee. We had to sit on the floor because he's got no furniture, only cushions. You just can't use the toilet, can't use the toilet here. I won't have people using the toilet. I had to go down and use the toilet in Baker Street Station.
I've only met, I think, one person who claimed to have used it. Even his own sister, Pat, was debarred from the bathroom.
He even put plastic over the stove to keep things from penetrating. And see, I think that's rather telling. I mean, he didn't like being penetrated in any sense of the word. This was really a little cave of consciousness that he had there. I mean, nothing came in except him.
Williams spent the money success had brought him, not on himself, but on his parents, for whom he now bought a flat in Kensington. The real power in the family had shifted from Charlie to his son.
As Kenneth was getting more famous, Charlie had to toe the line. Couldn't say what he really thought, you know, because of Louis, and everything had to be just so for Kenneth.
Kenneth naturally, because he was so close to Lou, took the side of his mother against his father. And I remember on one occasion I was over at the flat that Kenneth had bought for them for tea, and the disdain with which he treated his father, and almost like him and Lou were together, was sort of, you know, almost hurtful. And I don't know how his dad took it, but that was just the sort of way that it was.